Okay, this video is an attempt to try and illustrate the snatch progression from the floor. So the first thing you're going to want to do before learning the snatch is finding proper grip. So the snatch, if you don't know, requires a wide grip where you can sink into your hip crease like such and maintain a stable overhead position so that it doesn't touch your head once overhead. This may take some working on flossing with the shoulders, further mobility work, but once the athlete can hold the bar overhead in the wide grip, the athlete is going to make sure that the implement can stay at the hip crease. So here's a trick: straightening one arm out vertical and one horizontal, and then bringing the bar back overhead. This should place you right at about hip width. So that's just a little trick, but it's really whatever the athlete is comfortable with when learning, and you may have to adjust over time. Again, so that's with a light implement or a PVC pipe, and once the athlete is comfortable with that implement, they're going to then take, for women, 35-pound bar or a 15-kilo bar or a 20-kilo bar for a man, which is 45 pounds. So for here, we want to have the athlete place the bar or that light implement overhead, then assume that same wide grip that they had before and have the bar rest right on the trap muscles. Again, just making sure that this bar rests on the hip crease. The athlete is going to hold the bar overhead, make sure that there is no blaring issues in this athlete's mobility or stability with regard to overhead. The athlete should have the bar right over his or her ears, and his ears should be right over his or her toes. So it should be a straight line: bar, head, hips, feet. So from here, what we're going to make sure the athlete can do is press the barbell overhead in a straight motion. So just using the upper back and arm muscles, the athlete is going to press overhead. For all of these movements, we want to make sure that the athlete can perform it 5 times correctly before moving on to the next exercise. So this is called a snatch grip strict press from behind the neck, and this is going to be the first active motion the athlete is going to learn in the snatch progression. Between each of these exercises, we want to make sure that the athlete has appropriate rest. So as a coach, you need to make sure that you don't rush this process and you just go right into the full snatch. You need to make sure that each position that the athlete learns is appropriate and acceptable, so that in training you can load them much more heavily than if you were to rush this process. So again, with each movement, the athlete is going to perform the previously learned movement. So here the athlete is going to do a strict press, and the next movement the athlete is going to learn is a snatch grip push press. So using the legs, the athlete is going to dip and drive the bar and follow through with the arms overhead. So you want to have the athlete perform the strict press, then place the bar back behind their neck, dip and drive with the legs, and follow through with the arms. So this implements the legs and the arm muscles as opposed to just the arm muscles with the strict press. And this is going to be important for later movements that the athlete will learning how to use that dip and drive motion to get the barbell overhead, and is most simply performed with the behind the neck snatch grip push press. Okay, so the next thing the athlete is going to practice actually doesn't require a barbell. So here the athlete is going to stand at about hip width, toes slightly pointed out, is going to practice landing about 1 foot length outside of their power stance or hip width stance. So it's a fast catching motion. You want to make sure that the athlete can appropriately perform this before moving on to the next movement. So again, the athlete is going to perform a strict press, bring it back, then a snatch grip push press with the legs. Now adding in the footwork and combined with the push press, the athlete is going to dip, drive, and land in what's called the snatch grip push jerk. There's a violent motion, and you should hear a fast landing of the feet, not to be confused with what some people call a donkey kick, so just kicking. You have to still press the bar, but violently land as well with that footwork we learned before. Again, the athlete is going to perform 5 repetitions, place the barbell down, and rest as needed. You as a coach need to be emphasizing any deficiencies, but probably more importantly what they did correctly between each repetition. So the next thing Again, without a barbell, you need to make sure that the athlete can perform a full squat in full range of motion before moving on to the next exercise. This will probably be one of the most time-consuming and challenging things you spend working on as a coach, but it's really something you need to knock out right away, making sure that the athlete achieves this position or comfortably can descend in a squat as low as they can. If the athlete needs to perform just without the barbell, this squat motion, that's appropriate too. It's as needed per the athlete. So again, the athlete is going to strict press. Bring it back, the athlete is going to snatch, grip, push press. Adding the footwork is going to do the push jerk. Now, the athlete is going to find that same stance they squatted in. With the barbell overhead, they're going to descend into the full squat and stand back up. Just like each exercise, they're going to perform 5 repetitions and make sure that they can do so consecutively so that the coach finds it appropriate to move on to the next movement. Breath is also very important in this exercise. Making sure you can stay tight in the abdominal wall and upper back is very important for performing an overhead squat, which is typically a very challenging movement mobility-wise. So here, the athlete is, after they've rested, they're going to take the same movement from the snatch, grip, push jerk from behind the neck, and they're going to piece it together with the overhead squat and perform what's called a snatch balance. So the athlete is going to press, the athlete is going to push press, the athlete is going to push jerk, and then the athlete is going to bring it back. Now the athlete is going to push jerk and then land into a full squat. Again, this is called the snatch balance. So you can see here how each movement that we've learned here kind of segues into the next movement, and that's important for this progression. You know, leave no gaps in the athlete position-wise. Make sure that everything they do is more or less a reiteration of a simpler movement that they performed last. So that's all we're going to learn overhead for now. For some people, the hardest part is now out of the way. What the athlete is now going to do is going to bring the bar, get in the grip, get in the snatch grip, and just bring the bar to the hip. Like the strict press, the athlete is going to only use their arm muscles, lead with their elbows and traps, and just muscle the bar above their chest if they can, almost close to the neck if they can do that. The athlete is going to take a little break. If you're doing this all in one day, this is going to be particularly fatiguing for an athlete, and you may not load them at all. So again, the athlete is going to perform the last movement, which is the high pull, and they're going to turn over into what's called a muscle snatch. So this is a no hip drive muscle snatch, just using the arms, turning over, and snatching. So this is the first variation of the snatch that we're actually performing, where we take the bar from the hip and we place it overhead. It's very simple. It's really just using the arms, keeping the elbows high, making sure that the barbell can stay close, and then swiftly turning and placing the barbell overhead. Now, using the same principles as snatch, grip, push press, first the athlete is again going to perform the high pull, then the muscle snatch. Now the athlete is going to bend at the hip and drive the bar up with their legs and complete the high pull, and then complete the muscle snatch once they can appropriately use that drive. Notice how they dip and drive with the hips and then follow through overhead. Once the athlete again has performed enough repetitions for the coach, you can move on to the next movement. You want to focus really on keeping the elbows high, the barbell close, and driving with your hips upward in this motion. The athlete is going to take around, a couple minutes or a few seconds if they're familiar with this movement. And here we have the athlete practicing the footwork again and the power jerk, because in the next movement, the athlete is going to take the bar from the hips. So here the athlete gets in the snatch grip, perform the last exercise that they achieved. So the hip drive muscle snatch. Now they're going to add that landing that they did in the power jerk and do what's called hip snatch or a hip power snatch. So use that same violent landing applied with that hip muscle snatch that they performed. So that's really probably the hardest part of the snatch is learning that quickness or that violent motion. And here we have the athlete performing the hip power snatch, finding their stance, then descending into a full squat. Now, I'm sure you can see where this is going, but like before where you had the snatch grip push jerk with an added overhead squat, now the athlete is going to do the snatch grip power snatch, or the power snatch from the hip, and then add the overhead squat seamlessly. So it's going to be a dip, drive, catch, and then land into the full snatch, just like so. Again, perform as many repetitions as needed. Make sure the overhead is really solid. Arms are straight overhead. And then the athlete is going to rest as needed again. Now, it should be noted that an athlete may not get through this entire progression within a day, a couple days, maybe not even a couple weeks. And if you are, collegiate strength and conditioning coach, it's very time consuming to work on, but it's really important because you won't be able to load the athlete as heavily if you rush through this progression. So again, the athlete is going to perform hip snatch. Now, the athlete is going to descend to the knees and then perform the motion. Very simple. What they learned at the hip, just descend down, complete the snatch. Keeping the shoulders over the bar, complete the snatch. It should be a pretty seamless progression if they were able to master the other movements before. You'll see a lot of coaches really try and rush into going right into the movement from the floor or from the knee, and it's really foreign to them, but it wouldn't be if you really take the time to learn all of those previous positions. Now, you see here the athlete is taking these smaller bumper plates and placing them on the bar. That's because we're going to take the lift from the floor now. So with the bumper plates, it gives a little height to the bar, and that's going to make it a little easier for the athlete to maintain proper positioning. So here the athlete's going to get in their stance, they're going to get in their wide grip. You're going to have the athlete have their shoulders above their hips and their hips above their knees with their gaze forward. Now the athlete's going to rise and place the bar down. Here you can see from the side, again, shoulders above the hips, hips above the knees, rise to the knees and drop. Rise, push into the floor and drop. So now we're finalizing the last of the positions here. So rise to the knee, rise to the hip, descend to the knee, descend to the floor. Now rest as needed. So now we really have everything we need to perform the snatch correctly. It's just about piecing everything together. So he knows how to snatch from the hip, and he knows how to rise with the bar off of the floor. So again, what he's going to do is going to get in the snatch grip, shoulders above hips, hips above knees, rise, descend back to the knee, complete the snatch. Going to take rest as needed. Now this is the second to last thing that the athlete is going to do. He's going to once again get in the same grip, get in the same stance, shoulders over hips, hips above knees, rise, and then complete the movement. So now the lift has almost completely been desegmented, and he is about to perform the full snatch. There's no further breakdown of the lift from here, so this is the last thing the athlete will learn at the end of their progression. Proper stance, proper grip, proper positioning, back is flat, perform the full snatch. Readjust stance, readjust grip, get your breath, tighten the back, rise, hips, catch, and then the lift is complete. So that's really it. If there are any questions, please leave comments below. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.